This man shouldn't have been here, and then came here, and then didn't want to let people know on the flyer, you know what I'm saying, that he was an ex-pimp.
I don't want nobody to know.
What's the hidden truth? What's the hidden truth?
Man, you come from an era where pimping was pimping. It wasn't no human trafficking. Now they got human trafficking and sexual exploitation. That's the way to re-pimp survivors. The organization get money. I'm woke.
But see, this is my thing. My sister. I'm a little younger than you. I'm only 41. So I was a baby growing up in your pimp era. I wasn't trying to listen. I did. I know it. Did you hear what I said up there? I said they presented women to me.
Right.
And when my OG came on me and say, how much you charging for them?
Right.
I say,
At that
charging.
point, hold on.
I say charging.
Right.
I ain't know nothing about that.
Okay.
But I was a smart young man.
Okay.
And if you was gonna give me the money at that time, come on with it.
So, without any further ado, put your hands together and have a warm welcome from Minister Burron Pittman from Damascus Road Family Worship Center.
Burron Pittman, B as in boy, U-R-R-O-N, P as in Paul, I-T-T-M-A-N, founder of Damascus Road Family Worship Center.
Chrissy, C-H-R-I-S-S-Y, HOPE Against Trafficking, victims advocate. I feel like a good way to start off would just be by talking about how women get caught up in trafficking. You know, coming from a bad home or poverty or, drug addiction in the family and all that stuff, it makes them vulnerable to get caught up in that lifestyle. But I feel like I've heard it's kind of the same for traffickers. They've come from that too. And but I've never had that conversation.
And most people don't understand that dynamic. They just look at the trafficker as beasts and monsters. And usually they never try to find out the root of what made them or what created them to be the trafficker. Mm-hmm. You're right. A lot, when I was introduced to it, it was runaway girls brought to me. Mm-hmm. And just so happened, I was a runaway guy.
Right.
Just trying to fend for myself at 16 years old. Mm-hmm. Not knowing what I was getting into, just trying to fend for myself. So it's a weird dynamic because I don't want to take the shift off of survivors of human trafficking, but as well as some traffickers are survivors.
Right. What happened in your life that brought you to that point?
At 16, I was estranged from my family. Dropped out of high school, living in a spot. Actually, I was doing other hustles. Human trafficking, back then they would have called it prostitution.
Right, yeah.
The farthest thing of my mind,
yeah.
Literally. And I was presented one day by a friend, hey man, these runaway girls, they don't have nowhere to go. Can we bring them to your house? And at that time, they girls. I'm not thinking about selling them. I'm thinking about them for myself. Hey, I'll benefit from them.
Right.
And by me having a lot of people who were at my house, because mind you, it was a spot. They began to get intrigued about these girls. Who are these girls? Never seen these girls. How much you offering for these girls? And by me trying to fend for myself, I gave them a proposition. If you guys want to stay, you're going to have to do some work. And that's how it all begun.
Yeah.
As you go along, and I can't speak on your side, you become numb to it. you don't really know what you're into. You're just going by it every day and every day. And it takes you to have a solitary moment to really reflect back and see the different lives that was affected. And I often tell people now, hurt people usually hurt people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So do we strategically go after it? I'm not going to speak for the masses,
Mm-hmm.
but I know for me, it was nothing that it was sought after. Like, my dynamic is different. I never put my hands on women. I never fed them drugs. You know what I mean? It was just the ultimatum. You want to stay in this house, you're going to have to do what you got to do. Whether it be clean up, cook, if the guys want to get you, and that's how it began.
Mm-hmm. In those moments, like when you started doing that, was there anything inside of you that felt like, even though it was for survival, like you just felt like it was wrong?
I think one day, it was 3 girls actually, and one of them was mine.
Mm-hmm.
No one could touch her, she was mine. And another one, she had went out on a mission, and it was one girl who was stuck there. And she was the youngest girl of them all. And I can recall coming out the room with my girl and seeing 3 people on her. And at that time, I mean, I had an unsurreal moment, like, wow, this is really going on in front of me.
Yeah.
So it always stuck with me, even when I got out of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I would go and think I was helping other ones. Like I was in Cass Corridor.
Mm-hmm.
So I would take girls' money to get on train tickets. I talked to them, hey, what you doing out here? Well, you know, I'm stuck out here. I don't have, where you from? Where your family at? They're down in Alabama. So I would literally go get train tickets to try to get them out the way.
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing, once you're inside of the lifestyle, it's hard to get out. So even with relocating them,
oh, absolutely,
they still had to deal with the issue.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand it for years.
That's a hard concept for people to understand, because I think a lot of people think that, you know, we should be able to just go pick women up off the street and they'll be fine.
Right.
You know, but the emotional and mental scars that have been formed are just, I mean, they're lifelong kind of.
Absolutely.
You know?
And I speak with women survivors all the time, and I have to reassure you guys, I'm not your voice.
Yeah.
I could never be your voice.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be your advocate.
Yeah. So, like, how did you get out of doing that? Like, what happened?
Honestly, the girls were so into it that they began to show their boobs off to little kids. Mind you, I was in a spot. Mm-hmm. So people who had owned the house, they came and put me out, and that's how we severed ways. I ended up going to the penitentiary in 1999. Mm-hmm. And upon going to the penitentiary, it was that solitary time.
Yeah.
And God literally was speaking to me.
Mm-hmm.
And he was telling me, this isn't you.
Yeah.
You're not a monster.
Right.
This manhunter, right here, you see her?
Come on, arrest him, Chief Riley.
There she go.
You know, I don't know if you remember, but I was at that event where, you know, survivors were protesting.
Chrissy on the warpath. Hold on. Okay. Here we go. There go Chrissy.
That doesn't help it. I said, hold Burron Pittman accountable for his actions.
I didn't talk to you there, but I just observed more than I talked. I think what's really hard for, like, the anti-trafficking community for decades, I don't think that anybody has in this area at least, I don't think there's been any ex-traffickers or ex-pimps, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
who have tried to step into the anti-trafficking community. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's like a really hard thing to wrap your mind around when you're,
Understandable.
you're like advocating for victims,
Right.
and you're like, whoa, what's happening right now? Like
right,
this person wants to, and it's scary because the scary thing for us is, and I'm not speaking like about you personally, but traffickers in general and pimps in general are usually so good at manipulating and so good at, going into things and acting like they've got good intentions, but in their hearts there's not actual good there, and I think it's scary for, any survivor or survivor ally who, when an ex-trafficker comes and you're like, well, how do we know that
Right.
they've really like reformed?
Right.
Because a true repenting is your heart turning away from a sin.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so I think it's just scary because it's hard to know for sure if somebody has done that,
And if you were there, that's why I made it intentional to extend the olive branch,
mm-hmm.
because it is your forum.
Mm-hmm.
In all reality, you guys are the survivors of some of the most horrific things that has been done in your life.
Right.
And I just, like I say, I'm not your voice.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to advocate with you. I don't want to make it seem as though I'm trying to do it on my own. It's
Right.
going to take a collective effort.
Traffickers who have been reformed and they've come out of that life have, valuable places to speak, especially, maybe to teenage boys to tell them how to avoid that.
And it's combating young men from themselves.
Right.
Because it's easy, especially in this urban area, it's easy to get caught up in the glitz, glams, the lights,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking you know what you're getting into,
Mm-hmm.
when in all retrospect you don't.
Right.
Because one thing my father used to always tell me, it's a snowball effect.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that happens big starts from a small snowball.
Right. What do you think a good process would be, or good questions would be, or whatever, to vet somebody who's an ex-trafficker who wants to come into the anti-trafficking movement?
I believe first starting off with a background check, and secondly, educating.
Mm-hmm.
If you're committed to going through a certain course, maybe a 4 or 6 week course, twice a week or something, then maybe you're really serious at it.
Right.
Because you're committing yourself to something.
Right.
And that's what a reforming is.
Right.
You
Yeah,
commit
absolutely.
yourself to another process.
Mhm.
And then with the ex-survivors having their questions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like when you go to school, you get a test. At the end of the card marking, you get a final exam.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, background check, educate knowledge, put knowledge into it, and then have a questionnaire from a panel of survivors. I believe that's a
I like that.
kickstart.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have all of the answers,
Right, yeah,
but
no,
I believe
yeah.
that would be, and once we come together collectively,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we can get a proper vetting process.
Right. Do you know where any of the girls that were at that house, do you know where any of them are now?
I don't.
Do you remember?
From that day, like I say, we were kicked out,
Yeah.
and from that day, everyone parted their ways.
Yeah. If you could say one thing to them, what would you say?
I apologize for even putting them through what I put them through,
Yeah.
because I don't even know what that triggered.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It could have been detrimental for the rest of their lives. And
Right.
I can't take it and just think, oh, they were runaway girls from a group home, they were already trying to do it. No,
Right.
I have to own up to my responsibilities. And owning up to my responsibility is apologizing. And that's why I want to advocate.
I just think it's important,
It's definitely important.
for men to speak to men, and it's Just like in the church, men mentor men and boys, and women.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think that would probably be a really good place.
Right.
That needs help as well.
I just don't have the resources of the Johns,
Yeah.
but I'm all for whatever can combat and help this movement. Period.
Yeah.
So if it's going into a class and me speaking to the Johns, whether it's the court but that's what I say, they usually get a slap on the wrist.
I know.
So if the court system was official with it, yeah, I'll go into 15, 20 men and I'll tell them,
Right.
you wrong.
Right.
And this is why you're wrong.
Right.
You got a wife at home with 3 kids and you're sitting up here with these kids and you're exposing these kids. I don't have an issue with doing that at all.
What would you say to someone, to survivors who believe that justice should still be served? That, you should still have to do time for trafficking or
all I can do
I'm
is
just
pray
curious.
for them. Like I say, just because you go in the penitentiary don't reform you.
Right. Well, and I don't think they're necessarily talking about going to the penitentiary to be reformed. It's more about justice for the victims.
I can only leave it up to God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's going to be a lot of people who combat it. There's going to be a lot of people who's for it. I'm just trusting God in this whole process.
Right.
Do I believe I need to go behind the walls? I don't believe that. Because I've done the work.
Right.
I've been on the forefront. I'm advocating. Why would you want to take someone off the streets who's doing that?
Right. Well, again, I think it goes back to justice for victims, and that's been such a hard thing for victims and survivors, is a lot of times they don't get justice. So many victims, their trafficker walks away, with no harm done to them, usually coming out better on the other side monetarily too,
but
they never get justice.
From my end, I just didn't walk away because it still sticks with me. I still feel that pain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not, I escaped it.
Right.
I've been to the penitentiary. I've seen men raped in the penitentiary. So it's a lot of things that I always have to reflect on, not wanting to reflect on it, but since I was in that position, it always flashes back.
Right.
So it's a haunting experience. It's not just I'm walking around and hey, lackadaisical. No.
You say it's a haunting experience. You mean the lifestyle that you got caught up in?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I think that it's way more haunting for the victim being
no
raped
doubt.
over and over again.
No doubt.
Yeah. So.
I don't put that past it at all. So to that question, I can't really, like I said, I have to leave it up to God.
Yeah.
And as survivors, we've all done something wrong to somebody.
Well, I've never sold a human being.
No, I'm not saying. No, I'm not saying.
Yeah.
And I'm no means trying to put it on a parallel scale. But it's somebody that you probably said something wrong to that feels like they want justice from it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, and like I had said earlier when we were talking that, I know God isn't up there comparing our sins and measuring them, but here on earth, the pain that we cause people can definitely be measured. So me, offending somebody compared to a young girl being trafficked, that's measurable in terms of pain. How much pain have I caused? How much hurt have I caused? Have I just set this person up to fail for the rest of their life?
Have you ever seen someone...
Well, I want to finish that thought, though. I mean, so to say that, to compare like the pain that I may have caused somebody with something silly, because I've never done anything crazy to anyone.
No, I'm not speaking of you, and I'm not trying to parallel it. Like
well,
I
with anyone, I'm saying,
right.
You said we've all done something, to hurt. Hold on.
Okay.
We've all done something to hurt other people, and that's absolutely true. Everyone on this earth has done something to hurt other people. But on this earth, we can measure what we've done to hurt other people. So the justice for, me offending somebody may be that, I lost a friend, or I, whatever, I don't know. But I believe that justice should be harsher for somebody who is selling another person. And whether you come from, and I understand, like, you fell into a situation and you just kind of went with it, but you made that decision to just go with it. You know what I mean? And I'm huge on justice. And so it's hard for me to not feel like, your victims still deserve justice.
Man, I get, and I totally get what you're saying. For one, I never did it for monetary reasons. And my point was, have you ever seen someone bullied to the point where they killed themselves?
I personally haven't.
I have. Have you ever seen someone who was human trafficked and killed themselves?
Oh, absolutely.
I have as well.
Yeah.
So when I say justice comes in different forms, and those were close people to me, very close people to me. So when I say justice comes in different forms, and I'm not trying to be insensitive, I believe sometimes God pricks the hearts of some of the people to understand the real justice.
Agreed.
And sometimes the real justice is seeing the preventative measures.
Right.
Okay, if I had 3 people who was in this lifestyle and I saved 3,000 people from it, has justice been served?
For those 3 victims? No.
So justice
for those 3,000, yes.
That's what I'm saying. So
but those 3 matter just as much as the 3,000.
And that's my point. Even with the 3, what if they're running for mayor? What if it catapulted their life? What if they took that experience and stepped on it and climbed higher?
Well, it doesn't make it any better or okay.
Nothing makes it better. So true
because
justice,
my experience catapulted me into the work I do now. And, I'm thankful that it did. But it still wouldn't be okay with me for those men to be out free walking around like they never did. You know what I mean?
So if they got out of the penitentiary from, and I don't know how many years or what went on, do you still feel that justice was served and they went and combated and they went and started doing it again?
I feel like justice was served for me.
For you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So is justice a full scope scale or is it an individual scale?
Well, it's both. I think that justice should be served for each individual victim, whatever that.
So if those 3 women said they forgave me, would that be justice for you?
Absolutely. That's for them, their own personal hearts.
Exactly.
For my own personal heart, those 2 of the 3 men going to prison, that was justice for me. Right. I think that it might look different to other people. If those 3 women, talked with you and forgave you and they were good with that and they're good, that's okay then.
And that's all I was saying.
Yeah.
Is it individual or is it corporately? You see what I'm saying? And
yeah.
That's why I say the advocacy sometimes can be the justice. When we just take our own personal selves out of the equation and we look at the bigger picture, sometimes God is showing the justice.
Right. And I'm not saying that people's lifestyles or the things they've done wrong can't take them to greater things to do good for the masses. I know that it can. My heart and, working with HOPE Against Trafficking and working with victims is always, what does that victim need to feel justice? And because it really is an important thing for them to feel like, it's that this person hurt me and justice was served, they're being disciplined for it. And for you personally, you felt like justice was done because God, pricked your heart, as you said, and, you've experienced things that have hurt you and, caused a lot of pain, and that was your justice. But that still doesn't bring justice for them. That's all I'm saying.
And no, I get that. I totally understand that.
Yeah.
And like you stated, what would I say to them if I could see them? Of course, I would try to do everything in my means to let them know the sincerity and not just apologizing.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I don't have those means.
Right.
To even see those. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you make a statement, what do I say to the women who want to see justice done? How can justice be done?
We've done some bad things in our life. And we can be thankful to God, although we were the worst, He can still add more chapters to your life. And I need about 5 people who can thank God today that I ain't what I used to be, because He gave me a continual conjunction to where my life can get better. I mean, I dropped out of high school, but my last chapter I got my...
I'm not pointing the finger at no one, because my accountability is for me. It's not trying to prove anything to anyone else. It's what I have to own up to. You know what I mean? When I make statements, it's just to try to open up the broader, just like you say, 2 weeks ago, you wasn't even thinking about doing this at all. So when I make the statements, it's just to open up a broader scope of thinking. That's all. And not saying that your way is wrong.
Right.
But it's up to me to open it up if you want to try to trust me. That's it.
Yeah. I feel like I'm more comfortable with the idea if there's a process in place and somebody that like you'd be accountable to when you're doing these things, because we all need accountability, and me included. I'm accountable to people at work, and and so I guess I'm more comfortable with the idea of it if this and this
check
happens.
And balance.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
And everything has check and balance.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, a few weeks ago, there was, no space in my mind for the thought of, ex-traffickers ever coming into this world at all. But I'm sure there are, going to be, people who have stuff to offer. And I think as long as there's a way to, interview and educate and make sure that they really have, reformed and really have turned away from that lifestyle. And I'm talking about all behaviors, the manipulation and the, just all of those things that really, those deep-rooted issues that come with that lifestyle. I guess I would, be more comfortable with it once those processes are in place. So.
And like it was stated earlier, it don't have to be on the same forum.
Right.
Because there's different scopes throughout this whole thing.
Yeah.
So I'm open to whatever I can do to help the movement.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
Period.